starting with a simple problem, right? This would be an icebreaker problem, right? The first easy problem in a phone screen. Yes, no pressure, no pressure. But I think it's a good one for us to do as a group. So here's the problem. Everybody's familiar with the quicksort partitioning? Yes? So when you think about quicksort and it has a lot of duplicates in it, right? Then any ideas for how you might want to change the partitioning method to make the performance better? How would quicksort perform in presence of a lot of duplicates?
What do you mean a lot of duplicates?
Like lots of duplicates around. So twos, yeah. So there's, if n numbers are there, let's say everyone is duplicated, an average of 8 to 9 times. So there's, and a fraction of the values are the unique values, and then there's tons of duplicates around. What comes to your mind as something that's like, what could?
The swaps would be sort of skewed to one side.
Skewed to one side, swaps will be inefficient. You might end up partitioning on the same pivot.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, have a seat, don't move the camera. Hi, oh, full house. Is it? Yes, Surabhi, no choice. Front row, is that what you did in school? I can't guess. I'm trying to guess. No, Surabhi is like, no, you're sitting here. That's how it is, okay? Yes, you can do it. Yes, I was a back row person in school. So it's still hard for me, even when my child is performing, I still have a hard time sitting in the front row. I feel too exposed, even though it's really not about me and nobody is looking at me at all. But it's interesting how these patterns form in our mind and these comfort levels that I'm just comfortable sitting in the back. So I'm excited to do this to Surabhi. Yeah, you can do it. So how do we counter that? Can you think of a way to implement quicksort, the partition method of quicksort, in such a way that would, this must be tech support. No, there's a chair. Okay. So we don't have to do partitioning on the same pivot again and again, because if the data has a lot of duplicates, so you select the first pivot, let's say it is 8, right? So your first pivot is, I think I should use black because that goes. So the first pivot is 8 and you partitioned an array and everything less than equal to 8 is this side and everything greater than 8 is this side, yes? To a quick refresher of quicksort, how it's gonna go is we are going to go on this side, right? And recurse. And then you will again choose a pivot and you could choose 8 again. And you already know that everything is less than 8. So where is 8 gonna end up? On the right side. That's completely a waste of an iteration, right? The relationship between 8 and all of these, you already figured it out. So if there's a lot of 8s around, could we do a different kind of partition? We could do a 3-way partition, right? We could change our partition function. So the regular quicksort partition function, how does it work? It says, it returns an integer. So let's first remind ourselves how this works. So you have an array A, and you have, let's say, a pivot index, right? Or pivot value. Pivot index is better? Okay. All right, okay. So pivot index. So if pivot index is 5, then you're saying A of 5 should be the pivot, and please partition the array around it. And what do you return? You partition the array, right? In the end, pivot is here, no longer at original pivot index, and this is the final pivot P, and you will return this, right? And the caller of your function needs to know what sides to recurse on, and they'll take care of that. That's how quicksort works. Now, if we are going to do a 3-way partition, what will we need to return? So everything strictly less than pivot will be here. Everything strictly greater than pivot will be here, and everything equal to pivot will be all together in the middle. That way, in one call to partition, all the duplicates of that pivot have been taken care of, right? And now you won't, it will be a very efficient quicksort actually, because now the n log n applies to the number of unique values. Or the recursion tree, they will never will be a pivot repeated. Make sense? So it's a quick fix that we can just change the implementation, have a different partition function. What will our new partition function need to return? At 2, right? If you, and then of course in general, you will have the start and end too, right? Because we know how quicksort works. But for now, I don't want you to worry about that, right? Just say it's the whole array, because start and end we can incorporate later quite easily. So we have to return this, and we have to return this. So let's decide what we are returning. Do you want to return this one or this one?
The second.
The second one. I love when there's like a direct opinion on this, yes? And then this one then. So we, okay, so pivot start and pivot end. Yes, so the meaning is very clear that indices pivot start to pivot end are. Now, so this is, we'll just cheat here, not get into programming language business. We'll just return a pair of ints, right? Return in brackets the 2 numbers and we're good, right? Because we're not trying to, okay, I'll leave this, I'll get rid of this. I think we know very clearly what it means. So what's your best guess? So this is the problem. The interviewer, in this case me, has very patiently explained to you the problem. We've had a quick discussion about it. And it's assumed that you know the partitioning business. How long does it take to code it up? 10 minutes. Yeah. Shall we push it a little bit? Does everyone have a piece of paper? Do you need a piece of paper, Maria? You have? Yeah, okay. If you don't, then maybe borrow from the person next to you. Paper or you know, iPad or tablet is fine. So we'll do this experiment. Yeah, we will set the timer, and then we will see how it goes. Let's push it a little bit. So let's see how much we can do in 6. So if we can do it in 10 minutes, in 6 minutes, can we agree as a group that we should be solidly on our way? Even if you are not done in 6 minutes, you should be standing tall and proud at 6 minutes. Yes? If you are not, then is it fair to assume that you are not going to be done in 10 minutes? Yes? So no rush, but what is at stake here? So I want you to notice what's coming up inside you. Yes? When something like this happens. What, and then we will discuss that in the second portion of the workshop. Like what happens when someone puts you in the position that I'm putting you in? Yes, because that's what it feels like. It really feels like the clock is ticking, right? And this is a problem that's kind of under our control, right? This is about coding, and that's going to come up a lot in your preparation. So go. So hold your questions till the end, till the timer rings. Yes.
It's the partition method that we're making.
Yes, we're just coding this up, coding this up. So I'll leave this portion here so we can use this real estate. Minute to go. Okay, so I just got started. So the question here is not whether you finished it, whether you didn't finish it. The question here is A, how it went overall. What was the state of your mind as you were doing this? B, I want you to take a few seconds to reflect on clarity. As you write a line of code, how clear is it in your mind, the intention behind that line of code? As you declare a variable, what is the intention behind that variable? Yes? And having done problems like this before in terms of partitioning, the concept that I wanted to introduce for such problems, and some of you might already be familiar with it, is to lay out your array and your variables. They're going to stand for something. You're going to have pointers, yes, into the array, indices into the array that's going to stand for something. And I really want to encourage us to never write a single line of code that says while or for when you don't know what that variable actually stands for. Is it the last of a cross section? It is the first in a subsection of next. So if you really slow down, right? And so that's all I did in this time, right? I started towards the end. Say, okay, let me write this down first. And then I'll take like 10 deep breaths and then see how I feel about what I just wrote, right? So I'm going to have an array. And this is my kind of clarity setting in the beginning. I'm letting my variables know before I even declare them that there will be a section of less than values I have seen so far, followed by a section of equal to values that I have seen so far. Then there'll be values I haven't seen yet. And then there, in the end, I will keep a section of greater than, right? And this can differ. Maybe you had all three subsections in the beginning, gets a little bit hairy. Maybe you had greater than here, equal to here. It doesn't matter. But did everyone have something similar in mind, or at least they thought they were going for that, right? Now, if you can become crystal clear that now you're saying that at any point in my looping, array 0 to I minus 1 must be less than, I to j minus 1 are equal to, j to k minus 1 are unexplored, and k to n minus 1 are greater than. Yes, if you can linger on this a little bit without rushing. This is the thing that I want you to learn, to train yourself slowly to really slow down when you know you have a limited time. Yes, we can learn to slow down when we know we have a lot of time. Although, to tell you honestly, even that is a skill. And a lot of us are not very, very good at that. And this is something I do very, very heavily in my coaching practice, is help people really learn what slowing down means and how incredibly powerful a skill it is. It is so powerful that you should absolutely not even expect to master it quickly, because the benefits are going to be so amazing. It's really worth the effort. And there's true enjoyment in learning to really stay with the problem. There is a quote by Einstein saying, if he's working on a problem for an hour, he's spending 55 minutes with the problem, maybe 5 on the solution. And another place he has said, it's not just that I am smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So I want you to start keeping an eye on that. And it's hard because you're going to be in a room, there's going to be someone looking at you, you're going to be on the spot. So yes, it's hard. It's a little bit counterintuitive. It's a little bit oxymoronic. I understand that, but it is doable. Yes? Slow down to speed up is going to be the first thing that I want on your laptop, on your workstation, or the corner where you do your preparation. In capital letters, like a little banner. That the more rushed you're feeling, the more important it is that you slow down. Now, how? Should I order myself to just slow down? You can't order yourself into slowing down. Trust me, it has the opposite effect. You do it a little bit at a time. You say, okay, for 5 minutes, can I slow down? And you might say, okay, your system might say, okay, I can put my anxieties and fears aside for 5 minutes. Say, okay, after 5 minutes, you can start to worry about everything again. But for 5 minutes, so start with a small chunk of time. And in that chunk of time, just tell yourself, like, I want to pretend to have infinite time during these 5 minutes. So one of the things I recommend to people is to write very, very slowly, right? So we're going to try and write this code like we have all the time in the world. Yes? And then, so that's one principle that I really want all of us to take away. Am I rushing? Watch out for that speedy, impatient hurrying, the internal hurrying. And it's universal. I coach math from little ages to all the way to high school. That's like a volunteer passion thing I do on the side. And it's very common. Adults have it, kids have it. It's just, we don't like discomfort, which is great because that's how we survived tigers, So that it's a good thing, but it's misfiring in this particular situation. Somehow or the other, you need to communicate to yourself that it's safe to not rush for 5 minutes. Yes? So 5 minutes, we won't. Like, this is how you train everything, by the way. If you want to train yourself not to care what anyone thinks, try it for half a day. Yes? Don't order yourself into just not caring what other people think. That's not how it works. It's a bunch of muscles in there. It's not just some kind of character trait that you can just, shame yourself out of, But you can try it, and it's fun to try it. Say, okay, half a day was maybe too much. Let's try for 2 hours. Say, can I just walk the earth for 2 hours? Like, I truly do not care what anyone thinks. If not, then try for an hour. So learn this idea of isolating muscles and lifting small weights with them, starting with slowing down. Yes? Okay. So this is what I have. Well, it's just to grab the pivot so I don't have to keep writing pivot index all the time. I will need to initialize I, J, and K. I will initialize them in a way, I just want to note what the time is, see how long it takes us, 10:20. So in a way that accurately captures my picture. And I want you to notice how easy it is going to be now that you have the picture. Yes? Initially, how big is this section? Empty, empty, empty. This needs to be everything. So J is going to be initialized to 0. K is going to be initialized to N. This needs to be empty. I minus 1 cannot be 0. If it's 0, that means this has one element in it. So I minus 1 needs to be minus 1. For that, I needs to be 0. And if you wanted to quickly check, you will see that everything adds up right now. This is going to be empty. This is empty. This is empty. This is everything. Everything's unexplored. While super easy, we keep going until there's something we haven't looked at yet. So until the unexplored section is non-empty. At this point, that is super easy for us. We don't need to go back and come back and scratch our code and say, no, I don't think this is the correct ending conditions. This is going to be correct, okay? So while J is less than equal to K minus 1. If you are going to put this in the comment section, sometimes people try to be clever. They don't like to write K minus 1. So they will say this is the same as saying J is less than K. I encourage you to choose clarity over cleverness. Okay? Don't try to be too clever when writing this code. Because if your cleverness does not match with the cleverness of the interviewer, which it probably wouldn't, because they're probably still thinking about their work and are frustrated because they want to contribute to the company, but when you see it on the interview, on the calendar, you have an interview, there is a little bit of a hard sync that happens because you're going to lose an hour of your workday. So don't trust that they will appreciate these little clevernesses. Make it clear so they know what you're thinking. Yes. Does that make sense? If a particular style of interviewer points out that you could also do J less than K, you can say, absolutely, I could do that, but this is kind of more my style. But I'm down either ways. But I like to clearly depict what's going on and stand by it. Does that make sense? So completely own it. Now, there are three possibilities. You're going to examine the next element, which is A of J. So now you have three possibilities. A of J is less than pivot, else if A of J is equal to pivot, and then else, right? So this is gonna be a piece of cake now. If this is less than pivot, where does this element go? Right here. It has to go here. So this one will come here, and all is good. This section grew by one element. This section shifted right by one pretty seamlessly. So swap in the array A, what two indices? I. Pretty clear from that figure, right? There's no confusion at this point. And then you do I plus plus, J plus plus. Because not only whatever you brought in here, you know exactly what it is, right? It's from the equal to section, so you don't need to process it again. Done. If it is equal to pivot, that's the easiest. Just J plus plus, right? Just grew the equal to section by one. If it is strictly greater than pivot, then it has to go to K minus one. So swap A, J, K minus one. K definitely minus minus, right? What about J? Do you do J plus plus? No, because you just brought some unknown here, you got to process it. So no J plus plus. So let's look at these three. J plus plus happens in two of the three cases. And in the third case, K minus minus happens. Look at this. So we're good. Either we'll advance this guy or we will decrement this guy, which means we are every time closing the gap of unexplored by one, right? This is just double checking. This is just a side effect, but it's good to see it. And you're pretty much done at this point. And when you're done, what do you return? We had decided to return I and J minus one. So is that what you would return in the end? Think of what's going to happen to the values at the end. If this is empty, if you were to draw this again, so you have this, right? 0 to I minus 1 is less than. I to J minus 1 is equal to, and this is basically K to N minus 1. In the end, something happens because the section was empty. What's going to happen? These are going to cross, right? J and K minus 1, and they're going to cross. So what will we return? I for sure, right? Return I, and then what? So K to N minus 1, J or K minus 1, yes? So this is a little food for thought. So we are leaving it, return this, or we are saying, should we return I and K minus 1? So I'm going to leave this for you to explore a little bit. And I want to look at the time, so much discussion, 6 minutes to just write this code. This is when we're taking a lot of time, yes? And not worrying so much. Even if you stand here and you say, okay, wait, I need a minute or two to figure this out, that shows confidence. Never let the power of the situation rest completely with the interviewer. If you don't know the answer to the question that has just been asked, that doesn't mean you're powerless now. Yes, if I am your interviewer, show me how you deal with that. There is an incredible piece of information about the kind of engineer you're going to be that you can give me right now. So I want you to really turn that around and take that as an opportunity. That if I know the answer, then I will, try to cross all the I's. And of course, if you really remember the answer, please let them know. That never is a good idea to pretend to be solving a problem that you can always say that, hey, I think I've seen this before. One thing I do recommend is that don't say I know the problem, because what you think might be a different problem that might be revealed in the next 2-3 statements. And then it's somehow, in the moment, you feel like you have to walk yourself backwards from what you just said. Say, I'm familiar with it, which is pretty much the truth. Yes, sometimes the problem ends up being more complicated than you thought. So the reason I picked this was to discuss 3 things. Slow down. If you don't know how to do something, show the interviewer how you deal with that. Who are you in that moment when faced with a problem whose solution you don't know? You don't know what the next step is. It's very disturbing to us, that situation, because we've all pretty much good students in school, and we've always been prepared. That's all we know. You go to an exam, you're prepared. You're supposed to know the answer, and we're used to that. So especially, it's very reminiscent of examination, the interview process. If you are being tested, and the only kind of testing we have done is the one where we prepared the life out of it. And we always knew the answer. And if we didn't, that was not cool, which was the other problem, right? Growing up for most of us, like, that's how you showed the world you were worthy of belonging to the world, is what was being a good student. That's what people were, happy about. That's what people bragged about. You felt like you're making your parents proud, or whatever it was, right? This pretty much is pretty universal, actually. Maybe a little bit more intense in certain cultures, but overall, it's not specific to any particular part of the world. Academics is overall taken very seriously. And so this is something I want you to have a compassion for, that I know where this is coming from in this moment, this expectation that I should know the answer. And I want you to take a moment and remind yourself that this isn't school. This is work, this is life, and that part is over. This isn't about grading anymore. Even though there's a part of your brain will say, the person will grade you. Different companies have different gradations. That's their side of the business. That does not need to be your side of the business. No matter what shows up, show them who you are in that moment. Tomorrow, your team will be handed a project by the director, and which seems a little bit like, wait, we have no idea how to do this. So let the interviewer know in the moment that you will want me on the team if that happens. And I'm going to show you now who I am in the moment when I don't know what to do. We're very scared in that moment when we don't know the answer. That's the moment we put up our defenses. What sort of defenses do we put up when we don't know the answer? We say something related that we know, so they know that I'm not an idiot, right? We'll say, oh, how about hash table? At least they know that I know my stuff. Now you are no longer with the problem. You've gone somewhere else. You are putting up barricades to how you're coming across, how you're looking. That's what you're fixing right now. So you have abandoned the problem. Does that make sense? So that's what we do. We go defensive because we feel like if I give myself completely up to this situation, then I'm going to get lost because I don't know what to do. So I want you to train that muscle and say, I am going to get lost now. It's okay, just for 5 minutes at a time. I'm just going to lose myself literally in the problem. I'm going to draw 5 different erase and three-way partition them slowly, and I'm gonna let this come, marinate in the problem. Like when there's rainfall, good rainfall that actually makes the earth greener is not the one that just flows off a rock, is it? That's just rain gone. It's when it kind of meanders, right? So meandering absorption is what I want you to do with the problem. Let the problem make itself known to you. Say hi to the problem. Stay with the problem. And then clarity, right? So 3 things: slowing down and staying with the problem, clarity over cleverness. Make sure that every time you work on a problem, you can turn around and say, hey, I might have gotten stuck, but at every point, I knew what I was doing. Being stuck with a problem and being happily lost in a problem is different than feeling muddled. So I want you to draw that distinction. Am I feeling muddled, or am I simply just lost? Right? So if you go into a forest and you go this way and then you mark it and say, this didn't work out. And then you go the next way and that didn't work out. And if someone says, hey, what are you doing? You can say, I'm lost. But I kind of know where I am in my lostness. Yes? Because I've tried these 3 forks. There are 8 forks in the road. I'm not trying to be clever or do some voodoo and nothing's going to descend into my brain like magic, which is the other thing we do. We get upset at ourselves. So we just force our brain to say something, to save face. Yes, and I want you to recognize the strength and the power in saying, I'm going to need a minute, because I have never seen something like this before. So exciting as it is, I'm going to take a minute or 2 to just completely draw out an example and own that this is who you will get. Yes, even though your goal is obviously to get an offer. Yes, which feels good. Might be the most horrible job you'll ever do. I'm just saying, happens, okay? But in the moment, I mean, that aside, people wanting you, giving you a decent offer, saying, we love you, we love your intellect, we love your brain, you're so smart, please come, here's all the money. It feels good. So let's not pretend that we're all knowing that it is a good thing about to happen, but we can agree on the fact that we would like an offer, yes? So we'll be bummed if it doesn't work out. But in the moment, strategically, you want to forget about that. Not stop wanting it, but you have to learn to put it aside. Yes, that's how we deal with ourselves. We are evolved to be safe and secure from tigers. And we want peace and fulfillment. It's a problem, you see? So there is going to be some issues. They're not your problem. You are not weak. Stop reading motivational posters and articles for a while that tell you how inspiring people have done these amazing things. And in the moment, we feel so inspired and then feel like, what have you done? And then we feel like we should just order ourselves into not caring. Like, this person doesn't care what other people think. I should also stop caring what other people think. As if it's something that you are doing by choice every day. And so now that you will just unchoose it, it's like not taking the red trousers and throwing, I love red trousers, but I don't know why I said that. But, something that's not working for you and you just throw it out. That's not how this works. This part of you that really, truly, desperately cares what other people think, it's there for a very good reason. It loves you, yes? So you have to understand it and learn to work with it as a friend. Say, listen, I get it. I'm afraid that if people don't like me, I will go hungry. That's what your brain thinks, probably, right? Once we started to work in groups, that's how we took over the planet, okay? Before that, we were smart, but once we started to just really collaborate with each other, that was like, the other species were like, okay, that's game over, right? So, of course it's important what your peers think about you, because that's how you got fed, right? Some people went hunting, they brought back food, and then we all ate. And so if you were not well liked, you got the scraps. And you were just lucky to survive on that, right? So it makes sense. I want to be liked and respected by people all the time. It feels very safe because I feel like I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to be isolated or disconnected and left behind in life somehow because nobody cares about me. So understand it and say, you know what? I don't have to abandon that whole way of thinking. but maybe I can just put it aside for 10 minutes at a time because it works for me. How many people have had brushes with imposter syndrome, which is very common in the Valley? Yes, I have imposter syndrome, always had it. And you know, you just take it with you everywhere. What are you gonna do? I mean, it's probably just, you know, it's like you take a kid and give them some crayons. They have to work now. You know, you don't get rid of it because they're probably trying to protect you. Does that make sense? So that's the biggest coaching bit. What will come later in the workshop will just be very strategic advice. And like I said, don't worry about taking notes because you can watch it again and then write down what made the most sense to you. Yes? So we're good? I think this is a good time to take a 5-minute break, move around. Good breaks are really important. That's going to come later, right? And then we'll come and do another really, really fun problem. We're going to go from icebreaker problem to a relatively unknown problem. Yes? Okay, I'll see you in 5. So the question that we're answering right now is Chandra asked an excellent question that, okay, it all makes sense once you drew that diagram on the side with the 3-4 sections less than equal to question mark greater than. How, if you can't come up with that quickly, and what are the tools and techniques involved or ways of thinking about a problem that are involved to come up with that, right? So if it's a problem that you haven't seen before, you obviously cannot expect yourself to make that diagram. But from now on, if it's a rearrangement problem, I hope that all of you will just first draw the diagram and say, at any point, I would have kept all the less than values somewhere. I would have kept all the equal to value that I have seen so far somewhere. And I would have kept all the greater than values somewhere. And then you will realize that you don't have a million options. You only have 1 or 2 options for what that structure would look like, right? So if you have an array and you are looking at this element next, which is how these linear scans and comparison swapping would work, which we have assumed that we can do it in one scan in constant space. That means a question to ask yourself is, where are all the less than values? And the obvious place will be here. And then, you know, either you can also do this, obviously. So you can say all the less than values are here, greater than are here, and equal to are here, right? That works too. It's similar. But you will not come up with less than here, greater than here, and equal to here, and then 2 question marks. It won't happen because you've never done anything like that, because it is not the optimal way to do it, right? It's more convoluted. So simpler and without any cleverness, right? This is when we knew that we were going to do a scan. If we didn't even know that, and this is the first time we are seeing a problem like this, then what? Then you go back and you just write a bunch of numbers, right? You say 8 is your pivot. Something like this. And we say, hey guys, we have to rearrange this array so that all the values less than 8 are on the left side, all the values greater than 8 on the right side, and all the 8s are in the middle. Let's see how we will do it in one scan. And that's something we're challenging ourselves. Maybe we won't be able to do it in one scan, but in this case, we already know. So it's fathomable that you will tell yourself, let me try and do it in one scan, right? So that's you taking a fork in that jungle. So I'm going to try and restrict myself to one scan and see how far I get. This is the clarity of your exploration. Do you know what you are doing? Yes and no. I don't have a solution yet, but I know where I'm at in my exploration. What happens when we have performance anxiety is that we start cracking random whips at the problem. And that is a really absolutely opposite of conducive state to problem solving. That's not how you're muddying up in the waters that your brain is at this point is wondering why you're so upset. And if your brain could talk, it would say, can you please tell me what the problem is? Maybe I can help. Maybe let me just see the problem. You need to calm the water so you can at least see the problem. Yes? So in that frenzy, how to get out of that frenzy is, again, to slow down and do one trick that I personally use to this date is neat and clean work. And I will try to do that. I would say, okay, I'm going to write down ideas for this workshop very, very slowly. And I can see my handwriting. And after one page, it's starting to get, that means I forgot, right? I got out of, because that's the pattern. is worrying that you have to get it right. It has to be good. It has to be useful. Then you're like, okay, everything up till here is good. Let's start here again. And that's when you get your clearest, best work to come out. But it's a muscle. You will never conquer it, and take comfort in that. That means there's no reason for you to judge yourself. It's kind of like that mindfulness thing, that if you see your thoughts wander, don't judge yourself. Just bring it back to the breath, which, I'm sure it sounds wonderful, but it's on my to-do list. But it's the same principle, though. It doesn't have to just work in meditation. It can work in pretty much anything. Is that, okay, looks like I'm not slowing down anymore. That's all right. Now I can slow down. Just bring yourself back. And turning to the board and trying an example is the perfect way, because you get your gaze away from the interviewer a little bit. Just find a little private space. I like to put my hand on my belly, take a few breaths, right? This is me. Like how you are in an interview, isn't that where I am right now? Right? I'm on the spot. So I might need to slow down sometimes and completely stay on my train of thought, right? Stay on my plan, stay on my beats that I have decided for this workshop. And to catch my breath, this is something I can do. When I'm writing, I can just say, okay, come down. Slowing down will never hurt you. It's like a superpower when it comes to interviewing mindset and software engineering and problem solving. It's just like the most golden tool. So you'll hear about it again and again. So when we're messing around with the problem, just to finish Chandra's question, then we'll take yours. So okay, let's say, okay, I'm looking at 1. And I don't know what to do. Right? So stay there. Take out a notebook and say, and write in it, I'm not kidding. This is not a gimmick. Say, I'm at the first element and it's a 1 and I don't know what to do. The courage is to stay. Can you just stay with that? Just stay with what you know. Okay, I need to partition everything around 8. Okay, so I'm at a less than element. So I could leave it here. So far, so good. I know everything. So at this point, we've moved the pointer. Say, okay, we can manage this. Everything to my left is less than. And soon it will start to fall apart if you see an 8. Then you'll slowly come up with the 2 sections, how to keep them separate. I guarantee you, if you can slow down and stay with the problem, you will come up with the optimum solution. That's another beef I have with how problems are presented sometimes on Geeks for Geeks. Because people learn the problem, the optimal solution, then they retroactively work out the brute forces, and then they present it as if this is the sequence in which it should go. It depends on what your brain is doing that day. I think for a lot of problems, in my opinion, the optimum solution is also a brute forcey solution. If you just had gone very, very slowly, it makes the most sense. Having 2 pointers, starting them at the 2 ends, that's not clever. That's probably the first thing that will come to your mind if you had just slowed down for 3 minutes for partition, even the original one. What are you're not going to put 2 pointers in randomly in the middle. The only brilliant idea there is that you need 2 pointers. And when you slow down, that's not even brilliant anymore. It's like, what else are you going to do? You do need to keep track of where is all the elements you've seen before. You need at least 2 gatekeepers to keep them somewhere. If it's in place, it's going to be within the array. Beginning and the end are the most easier places to keep sections of things. So it's really not clever at all in that sense. It's not magical. And we have to learn to see the beauty in it so we can find the joy when we are doing all of this. Yes? So, yes. Question?
Yeah, so in an interview setting,
yes.
When we slow down, do you have any suggestions on how to keep the communication going? Because
if you've been training yourself to slow down, then you can slow down 2 minutes at a time. Yes?
2 minutes of silence.
Yeah. I dare you. Just say, I'm just going to take 2 minutes and think about this. It's a two-way. You're checking them out, they're checking you out. And we forget that. It's okay. If that's who you are, that's who they're going to get. In my opinion, and this is why I'm not in this business, because I don't give guarantees. I don't want to I have my own opinion on how this should be pursued. And I want to take my work to people who feel that that opinion empowers them and serves who they are as a professional. Because over catering to the interviewing environment in a way that violates the strength and power of who you are as an engineer, I don't recommend, which could be bad advice. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. Taking 2 minutes of silence in a 45-minute interview, if that's no longer allowed, you know, you got to rebel against that. But I think silence is okay when they know what's going on. Just tell them what's going on. Right? If you're solving a problem with a colleague, you just don't go suddenly silent on them. That's not polite. So you let them know that, is it okay if I take 2 minutes? And if you've been training yourself, your body will tell you 2 minutes are up. So timing yourself and doing the slowing down exercise every day, multiple times a day, needs to be the first order of business. Yes? So I want to present the second problem. I love this problem. So here's how it came about. It exists out there. I've done some Googling, so it's not entirely new, which is a bummer. Of course, people have thought of everything. So annoying. So we went camping. I went camping with a bunch of other families, right? And being a math geek, I'm always given the task of like the expense sorting out at the end. This time it was a pretty big group. And I started to think, because I thought I'm just gonna like totally nerd out on this time. There will be code and everything. I was like, give me a day and I will tell you who owes how much. And they're like, why don't we just do it? Like, no, I'm just gonna use this as an excuse to find the coder in me again and have some fun. So I'm thinking, okay, there's a friend of mine, let's say, is a single parent with 2 little kids who are super picky eaters like mine. So that means you're just pretty much bringing all their own food. Just feel like they shouldn't have an equal share, they should have a smaller share. So I decided to give everybody some percentages based on, my friends just humor me, nobody objected. It's a small group, not that big even, like 10 families. So big enough for me to have fun, but not big enough that someone will object to all these executive decisions that I made, that everyone has a different share now. So once you have everyone's share, everyone tells you we spend this much, we spend this much. Even in a spreadsheet, very quickly, you can compute who owes how much, right? So you have n families, and this is a list of how much they owe. Per family, you have how much they owe. So you can imagine an array of just integers, right? So let's say somebody owes -30. That means 30 is owed to them, right? Somebody owes $12. Somebody owes -120, which means that's owed to them, and so on, right? And of course, everything has to add up to 0, otherwise I messed up in my spreadsheet, right? So this goes on. So you want to minimize the number of transactions. And you also, because this is between friends, so I was told that anything under $5, no need to include it, because we all treat each other to coffee and bagels all the time. So, nobody wants to do a PayPal amongst friends for less than $5, or at least that was the decision. So now minimize the number of transactions and try to not have lots of itty-bitty transactions in there, because people just won't do them. At the same time, if someone owes 12 or is owed 12, and there are 3 people that owe $4 each, you cannot ignore the whole thing. Yes, that's not what it means to reject transactions less than $5. No, everyone in the end can be squared off to an amount that is no less than 5 away from their amount, right? I mean, this person's lost $12 now because 4 is too less an amount. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit trickier than just coming up with random transactions, and if it's under 5, ignore it. And we have to do it in a way that says, okay, nobody in the end, if you're owed $12, you got at least 7 back. So is that clear? The problem is clear, somewhat clear. So that's the problem that I brought. I know I said only 1 problem, but I have actually 3. But we'll only do 2, and the third one I'll mention at the end for you to play and have fun with on your own time.
So how would this person get, so you're guaranteeing that this person will get at least $7?
It has to, that's whatever solution you come up with. Yeah, I have coded it. Is that what you're asking? Yes, it was a really, really fun problem. It is NP complete. So that's kind of cool because now I'm off the hook for doing it in the best way possible, right? I'm pretty convinced that it's NP complete. Someone has tried to prove it out there on some website that it is NP complete. I don't agree with their proof, but I think it is NP complete. Duh. Yeah. Yeah. Well, from their point of view, you can ignore because they don't want 4. But from his point of view, by our rules, everyone has to do the transaction for an amount that is no more than 5 away from their amount. So this person cannot benefit unreasonably from the situation. Yes? So if I benefited nothing and Maria benefited 5, I can digest that. If I benefited nothing and she benefits 12, that's not, there are limits to friendship. And that's not okay with me. Yes? That was the fairness that I decided anyway. And I thought it was weird to just ignore any transaction. What if I come up with a horrible set of transactions and that are all less than 5? Then no, it just felt like it had to be fair and it had to make sense. So in the end, everyone should be like, okay, yeah, 20 was owed to me and I got 15. So all is good.
Nobody's lost the situation.
Loss, or I mean, it'll be gain in this case. So in this case, if nothing happens, everybody's okay. But no, it has to be fair because this person benefited overly much. Loss or benefit. Yes, that's a good way to put it. And we want to minimize the number of transactions. Yes, so we're finding now ourselves in a completely, this is the scary situation. Like, I have never done a problem like this before. So of course we won't completely solve it or write the code because we don't have time, but I want to get us started because this portion, so the first problem we did, you will find yourself in that situation a lot when coding. You will find yourself in this situation a lot when you're preparing. You will pick up a problem and you will find yourself to be completely lost on it because either it's been a while since you looked at a problem like that or you've never looked at a problem like that. Some of us did an algorithms course 15 years ago, so it's just as good as gone now, right? Some fundamentals are there trickling around, floating around, but they're not very strong. The connections are not very strong in our brain graph. So we're looking at it and going, so this is when we take a breath and say, slow down. Don't turn your back on the problem. Don't quickly go. This is such a common thing people do. Maybe I could put them in a hash table. How about a hash table? Right? And the response to that is, well, how about it? I don't know. Right? This is an attempt to defend ourselves. I know about hash tables. I'm going to fill this space with something that at least sounds intelligible. Don't do that. Set that standard for yourself and say, I'm going to say muddle stuff. Say, wow, okay, this is a fun problem. I have to say that I've never, ever seen it before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with some really cute little examples and see how this is going to go. Shall we? Okay, so this was a big one. These are, okay, let's keep this here because it might be useful, right? So I like to take representative examples. Come up with a technique, and if you come up with an example that breaks it, then that's a good example. So try to keep them in circles and squares and use the real estate. It takes 1 minute to erase a board. I don't know why people are so scared to use the board and saving space. You can just erase it very quickly. So have fun and say, okay, let me get a nice example. So let's say, negative 50. I'll write negatives on one side and positives on one side so I can see if my example makes sense. So you have, let's say, 35, 13, and 12, and then negative 8, and negative 12, maybe 10. Does that fit? Yeah, 70 on both sides. Yeah, so so now we at least realize it's easy to come up with these examples. Just keep doing random numbers and see how off you are, you know. And so then we can put them in a garbled state, so in not all the negatives. But already I can see having all the negatives on one side, it makes it easier for my brain to think, you know, dividing the people into two sets. We know how to do that in linear time, don't we? Yeah, it's partitioning around 0. So, okay, now what? What's the best that could ever happen? Assume that everyone has something that they owe. So there's no one who's just 0. Ah. So if no one, so that's like everybody owes 0. Right? So everybody, so we're saying that's not going to happen. Everyone, so there will be no zeros to make the problem interesting. Yes, but that's good to know. That's no transactions. If everyone has either an amount that they owe or that's owed to them, that means there is no 0 in this array. What is the best that can happen? Which means how many transactions? Think. A transaction can take care of 2 people. 1 transaction. N by 2. Yeah? Why are we thinking about this?
Minimize the number of transactions, and that's the minimum.
But why are we, yeah, best case. Why would we think about the best case? I mean, it's never going to happen, almost. Yes? Why are we thinking about, what are we doing right now? We're just messing around, but not in a muddled way. We know the question we have asked and we do not care if it's relevant to the final solution, because you're making the statement that this is how I solve problems. Yes? I'm not on the hook for every question that I ask. How is it going to take me to my goal? Yes? So many times, it's hard to let go of the fact that you want that job. You want to change jobs. You want that next job. Yes? And this problem, it's standing in your way, isn't it? That's in your way. That's not a nice way to look at a problem, you guys. Problem solving is not something I want you guys to do on your way somewhere. Does that make sense? Because problems, they don't cooperate like that. So it's kind of another, every single piece of advice I'll give you will be oxymoronic. Yeah? Slow down to speed up and forget about the goal if you really care about the goal. It's in your best interest to let go on a short-term basis. On a short-term basis, forget about the job, forget about how many problems you have to master. And don't order yourself to forget about it. Do it 10 minutes at a time. Say, I'm going to set 10-minute timer and really relax into this problem. And it really does work. And I will tell you that it's hard to believe in. I'll give you that. It sounds like good advice. I don't think you disagree with it. But it is hard to believe in it because we've never tried it. And I will tell you from working with many, many, many clients that the one thing that people tell me, even long after they have stopped working with me about, is this. That I forgot how to slow down. And then I remembered what you had taught me about slowing down. And this was a senior engineer at one of the top companies. And said, they were working on something, trying very hard to get it right, getting sick of giving an update to my team that it's still not done. No one was judging them in the team. They're pretty well established. And say, I got sick of it. And then on Friday, I told my partner, I don't know when I'm going to come home. I got to do this. For work settings, I call it clean contact. I have many terms for this. Infinite time exercise, clean contact, problem immersion. You can take whichever one you like. And they just sunk into it. They say, Friday, I can be in office. And this was already lunchtime on Friday when they realized that week is coming to an end. It's not happening. and I am not being able to try this clean contact thing. And so don't get yourself to a state where you're like, okay, maybe I'll just try now, what Geeta said. Okay, try it from the beginning. It works. It will work. Don't give up on it easily. Try it every day. So this person, starts at 1 p.m. and probably is in office until 10, because it takes a while to get into it if you haven't been practicing it every day. And then they're done. Completely done. Just slow down. So you know what? Nothing matters. Just take your time. Just take 18,000 hours if you need to. Just sit down on this and you have all the time in the world. You don't have to do anything, nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. This is all that matters. And they were done by 9 or something. I went home, submitted it. It wasn't all that hard. But they weren't with it all this time. You try a little bit, then we start judging, we start criticizing ourselves, we start hurrying, we start rushing ourselves. So there's a part of you standing on the side saying, you should be faster. What are you going to tell in that email? Oh my God, I have to write this email now. So I'm not saying you have to calm that chatter down completely. I don't know how to calm it down completely. But learn to calm it down little bits at a time. 5 minutes at a time. There's someone who wrote to me and said they have gotten very good at taking naps now because they've applied this principle to napping. So I lie down in my nap pod and I tell myself you have 2 hours. And so because when you train this muscle, you get very good at working with your brain. Your brain, there's a part of your brain that starts to trust you and say, he means it. She's serious when she says, so how do you do that? You set the timer for 5 minutes and you're going to tell yourself you have infinite time in the world. Then what? You slow down by writing neatly. Challenge yourself to just write the problem down again. Take 5 minutes to just do what we did on the board. You wrote 3, now we have 4 examples, right? We have the best case example. And someone might say, what are you doing? Say, I don't know, saying hello to the problem, immersing myself into the problem. What do you have? Well, I have 3 interesting examples. These 2 shed very important light on that restriction and what it means. So whatever solution I come up with, these are amazing for me to test it against to say it does the right thing. This is the best situation that could happen. So I know what to aim for, that we're not aiming for 3 transactions to magically take care of 18 families. We know the best I could do is 9 transactions. So that kind of relieves me a little bit because I don't think I'll be too far from the ideal. So myself personally, what I decided, let me try to do it in N transactions. Sounds fair? 10 families, 10 transactions. If I'm lucky, at least 4 of them will be under $5 and that'll look very neat and tight. So, okay, that's a little bit of a goalpost for us, right? Let's keep in mind N transactions. Why is it good to set these random goals? They restrict our thinking. They give us some boundaries to explore within. So instead of exploring the world of all optimal solutions to this problem, now you're only exploring the world that does it in less than N transactions, right? Or optimal and non-optimal solutions. So that the boundaries are good. Even if your interviewer says, oh, I would rather you didn't use extra space. You can say, yeah, I totally got that. But just to mess around with the problem and learn about the problem, I'm going to allow myself some space first, and then I'll see how to get it. Because I sometimes learn interesting things about problems that way. Is that okay? And just that's confidence is, I want you to start thinking of confidence in terms of the word comfort. Okay? So confidence meaning comfortable. I'm comfortable in my skin right now, which means I'm comfortable with what I know and I'm comfortable with what I don't know, which means I'm not scared to expose what I don't know. That's all confidence is in my view. It's just comfort. And it's interesting, it's like both start with the letter C, so it's easier to remember. That confidence is just comfort. So be comfortable with the fact that you don't know. After all, isn't that the most important thing to demonstrate in an interview? To be good at? That when given a problem I don't know, that's where I really shine. And shining doesn't mean that you know how to do it. That's bizarre. right? For you to figure out in 5 minutes how to do it every single time, that means you're not working on problems that are hard enough. You're not taxing yourself at the right level to grow. So if you're interested in your own growth and learning, then you should want to be working on problems that are just at the edge of your ability, just like this one. We can already tell no rocket science will be involved. Yes? This is within our control, but at the same time, we're like, okay, we need to navigate this slowly. So N transactions. Does this give any ideas? If each transaction, if I do a transaction, and if I want to do no more than N transactions, then each transaction should remove one family from the equation. That would be helpful. If each transaction says one person is done, then I will hit under N transactions. Yes? How easy or hard it is to do that here? Even if we did it randomly, let's pair negative 50 and 10. Yeah, and I'm gonna fudge them around even more, right? 12, 35, 13, this is already fudged up. Okay, so negative 50 and 10. So that what will be the transaction? That let's name these families A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah? So what will happen here? D gives to A $10. Right? There's no other choice I have here. I take the less amount, the absolute value, and that family is gone. Right? So now D is gone. And this has turned into negative 40. Right? So then I can do this again. And so on. And I will be done in less than N transactions. So we already have a solution. Right? Except whenever we hit a transaction that is less than 5, we should just not do it. Yeah, so we have something. Now, can we apply it to this? If we do that, any transaction less than 5, don't do it, then we haven't solved this issue a little bit. We're not minimizing them, just doing it under N, which I'm pretty sure is, because it's NP complete, and the best solution is N by 2, it's good enough to do it in N transactions. And sometimes the interviewer will not be impressed with a solution that you're mighty pleased with. Don't let them take your pleasure away. We can agree to disagree, say I had fun. Perhaps it wasn't, I'm sorry I couldn't get to the very optimum solution, but this was really fun. I remember interviewing somebody when I was at Google. It was like the 5th interview in the day. I think I've told the story before, so you might have heard it in one of my classes. But he was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. By the 5th interview, you're just so exhausted. And I said, well, I don't do systems. I do algorithms. And he's like, oh my God, that was the hardest class. This is not good. But the confidence is there. That's confidence. You're not arrogant, just comfortable with who you are in the moment. And this person was like, okay, well, nice to meet you. Let's do this. So I gave them a question. Sure enough, they didn't know the answer to that question, but gave them some hints. Of course, not every interviewer will be the same, but I recommended them wholeheartedly because I would just work with this person in a heartbeat. Very clear, sharp, doesn't have to have all the answers, but every hint that I gave, they just made it like it was their own idea. Own it. Everything that your partner gives you, which is your interviewer, say, yeah. Not like people are so defensive about hints sometimes because it's not your idea. I have had this happen that I'll give a hint to an interviewee and they'll try to dismantle my hint. And it's very confusing. It's like, what are you trying to do? We're trying to check each other out. So hit it back to me unless you strongly disagree. You don't have to defend your first idea. I'm steering you in one direction to see if you can quickly change paths. And if you can, that's going to be a difficult person potentially to work with. And potentially not, because they're just under performance anxiety. And there's no way for me to tell that. Yes. So if we let our ego aside for a little bit, at the same time take our strength and power and self-worth inside, which is different, then we can have fun and say, I already like myself. Like I own every piece of land that I walk in. I'm worthy of being in the world of accomplished software engineers. That is not under question for the next 45 minutes. I'm just going to do what I do. A problem will be given to me. I will do my thing. And I'll have fun getting to know this person. I'll keep them in the loop. I'll be respectful. And most important than all of this, clear. Get used to what clarity means to you. Muddled is what the biggest issue is sometimes. I think the people who would make top-notch engineers sometimes don't get through an interview process because the anxiety sends them into a muddled thinking. But like, what about this? What about that? They forget what they've already said. The hints feel to them like failures. Like if someone's giving me a hint, I'm failing. And that's a huge assumption you're making. Maybe I've chosen a hard problem and the only way I expect you to do it is with my hints, and I want to see how well you do with that. Right? So just make the best assumption that you can about the interviewer and just you run with it and do your part. Yes? So if we apply this to this situation, it's not going to work. Right? Is there anything else naturally that you might want to optimize? Like, is it anything that bothers you about pairing 50 with 10? Like, what would you ideally like to pair 50 with here? 35, because it's big amounts, right? Let's not only take care of one family, let's try to make these transactions meaty, right? Let's see where that leads us. Yes. So now we're going to order everything, right? So -12. I'm just not going to bother with the families because you can do that part in code. What was here? And this becomes 35, 13, 12, and 10. Let's try that. So -50 and 35. So there's one transaction of amount 35. And this 35 is now gone. And -50 turns into -15. In this case, that's okay. It still stays on the top. Otherwise, we're making a mental note that we need to reorganize things. Yes? So that will take some effort and we have to factor that into the time complexity. Okay, now we match -15 and 13. So 13 is now gone. And this -15 turns into a -2 and goes to the bottom. Yes? So we're keeping both sides sorted. Ooh, nice. Just the luck. Doesn't always have to happen. But when it happens, it's good, right? And then these two. And this turns into a 2. These are all gone. This better end. So now we don't need to do this. That seems okay. If we apply this to here, what will happen? We will not ignore this first transaction because this amount is not less than 4. So the only time we can stop our business is when the two maxes are less than 5. So there is this additional side effect that just fell out from what to me seemed like common sense. When you do these things by hand, if 4 people go out or do some shopping together, or you go to a trip and everyone spends different amounts, usually it's common sense. Well, you'll match the person who owes the most to the person who's owed the most. So you can have these meaty transactions. There's no mathematical or computer science genius about it. That comes later. And now it's only just about clarity. Now we already have a solution. Yes, sort everything. Take the first and the last, right? Which will be the bigger negative and positive amounts. Match them up, and you're going to mess up the sorted order of one side. So you can insertion sort it back into, or you can have a heap. Now you can go have fun with this problem. Am I right? Yes, we can end it here. But if you want my code, it's not very optimal. I'm sorry to say, but I wrote it in Python and just resorted the whole thing because it's just 8 families, and it's not for an interview. But I did think a lot about it. It's a really fun problem because you're keeping 2 sections of the array, right? So you could keep them in 2 heaps if you wanted. Take the top of both the heaps and match it. That's a lot of extra space you're using. And it just bothered me to keep them in 2 heaps, although they will be different sizes. So I think that's order n kind of space. So we can kind of digest that. And timing looks order n log n-ish, yes? Which is the first sorting will take that anyway. So it just feels fair. Because sorting is involved, I think we can hold ourselves up to the n log n standard. And then I learned, which I don't think you need to know or master for interview preparation, but I thought it was really fun, that you can keep all the elements. The data structure I'm after is something that keeps a dynamic set, dynamic in the sense it keeps changing, and always gives me the min and the max, yes? And the way I am approaching that is by keeping 2 heaps, because I know a negative will never become a positive, and a positive, so this kind of, I have this on my side, this particular aspect of this problem. But if you had another situation where you have a data set and you need the min and max, and they're part of the same data set, right? What is min right now perhaps could become a max later on, so then what do? We can duplicate them, the whole data set in a min heap and the whole data set in a max heap. When you delete the max, you need to know where it is in the min heap and delete it from the min heap as well, right? Does that make sense? So I want you to keep that problem on the side. And if you feel so inclined, check out min max heaps. So you can put them all in one heap. It is truly incredible. And do it all in log n times. The only reason I would say, the only disclaimer I would give is very often when we are in interview preparation mode, when we look up something, instead of stirring up curiosity and joy, it can just stir up more tension, because you feel like, what, how is this working? And if you don't immediately get it from reading the Wikipedia, then you feel like, man, this stuff's, it's a lot to learn. So I challenge you to say, no, I don't have to learn everything. I'll just learn a little bit at a time and set my milestone. So that's the next piece of discussion I want to have. So this is the problem solving aspect of today's workshop, right? It went way over an hour, but I decided to fold in the critical piece of advice about clarity, about putting the goal of the interviewer loving you aside for the moment and just working with them and demonstrating who you are. And what was the third one? So we're going to write these down. Slow down. So slow, stay, okay, and clarity. Clarity is king, you guys. They go together. You will find it so much easier to strengthen your clarity muscle that people have reported back to me that after doing the interview preparation by focusing on clarity, they have become a better communicator. This clarity has become a thing with them now. Now they're writing an email and asking themselves, I don't think it's completely clear what I'm saying here. So I want you to get to a stage in your careers where your hand refuses to write if you don't know what you want to say. And it's not that hard to do, trust me. Once clarity, for everyone who has ever worked with me, I want clarity to be one of your values, right? We have a professional value system. As a professional, you have your values that you don't like to compromise, whether it's collaboration, throw clarity in there. Explore what it means to you, right? If someone's having a conversation, if clarity is important to you and you didn't understand what the person just said, it will automatically prompt you to try and paraphrase what they said so you can both be on the same page. Yes? Does that make sense? Of course, there'll be other values too. So don't overdo clarity and stop an entire meeting. So, the collaboration, that's why is a great value too, so that we can all move together in alignment. But clarity for problem solving is an amazing, amazing, what I call it's, scaffolding. Like you're going down up this huge staircase, which looks like thousands of problems spanning hundreds of concepts, and I don't know how I'm going to master all of them. Clarity is like the railing, and the other railing is slowing down. Yes, if you have those two, you can slowly climb this staircase, right? And slowly go up. So what are the biggest obstacles for getting started with this preparation? Now, a lot of you are probably on the way to your preparation. Some of you are thinking about it. Some of you have prepared before and it's time to restart it. What's the biggest piece of anxiety? What's the biggest issue? What bothers you the most? Chandra? Yes. Because you know, to find, so this is my intuition, okay? And this matches the person's intuition who has a proof out there, but I don't agree with the proof, I think, you know, but I haven't studied it well. What you want to do is, so these are all the negative values, these are all the positive values, right? What you want to do is find like this guy, and this guy. They all add up. So like, let's say there is a 45 here, and there is a 15 here, and then there is a 30 here, right? Or something. So finding these subsets that have a sum of 0 is how you're going to get the optimum. The optimum is never going to be based on maximum, because sometimes matching negative 50 with 35 is the wrong thing, because 35 can be split into 15 and 20 and join two subsets, and then everything will be beautiful. And then, you know, does that make sense? Yeah. So that's my intuition, that this is related to subsets, right? The complexities of subsets. I think someone's phone is buzzing. So tell me about getting started, you guys. What's the problem with getting started? What is the biggest issue that faces you when you even think about preparation? Like, okay, maybe I should prepare. What makes it harder to breathe when you think about it?
For me, the first time around, which I had a very successful
Yes.
prep, I very much dedicated myself to it, and it had a positive outcome. But now I'm scared of I neglected certain aspects of my life because of it, and now I'm scared to do that again. I don't want to have to do that again. I want to do it.
I hope you won't. Yes, I hope you won't. So, yes. Yeah. Anyone who has worked with me knows that I'm militant about talking about non-work aspects of their life. Not in a deep psychological way, because that would be unethical and unprofessional, because I'm not equipped to do that. But I don't work with people who will say, I only want to talk about my career and I don't want to talk about how much I sleep. Then I'm not the right coach for them, because I'm going to want to know how much they sleep. I'm going to want to know whether they are spending enough time with their families or with friends, right? It doesn't go. You can't just focus on your work. And that's not, I don't want to foster that out there. You know, it's not a no pain, no gain kind of gung-ho coaching. Yes, but I do believe in it completely, that it's sometimes in life it's possible because you don't have things asking for your attention, but most times you want to have balance, right? So one thing is that it's going to take too much, right? It's going to take too much, and I'm not, you know, it seems like you would be dishonoring a part of yourself and ignoring it by jumping headfirst into this thing. The other thing that some of you have told me in person separately is too many problems. It's overwhelming set of problems and concepts to master. Yes? And
4 years of computer science, I need to learn in a month.
Yes. So let's go start with too many problems. Yes? Too many problems. Don't look at all those problems. You don't have to master 500 problems. You have to master maybe 70. That's, I mean, easy for me to say, because there's no money back guarantee in terms of interviewing, yes, for my advice. So, but I really do believe it. I have talked to people who have been through successful rounds of interviews, and they have mastered maybe 100, 125, but they said, yeah, probably half of you, just half. But you have to choose them carefully. You want to pick 70 medium to hard problems spread across all the topics and master the life out of them. Now you know what mastering means, yes? The first half of mastering looks like what we did with this problem. No quickly jumping to hash tables or solution. And the second half of mastering looks like what we did with the first problem. A code where you know each line of the code, where you know what every variable is doing. If I go in there and take that while j is less than equal to k minus 1, and I change that to j less than k minus 1, you will say, no, you can't do that. This is what will break. This is why it breaks the algorithm. This is exactly how it will play out. You want to know those problems at that level, that you know enough brainstorming as to how you came up with the problem, and you know enough about the code. If it has 3 solutions, you know all 3 of them. Yes? Does that make sense? So you master a small set of problems. How to get there? Set milestones. Some of you have already heard this from me before. I'm a big proponent of taking all the topics, taking one problem per topic, And that's your entire universe. My favorite analogy for this is you don't take a first grader and show them 10th grade math as they're learning to add 5 and 8, which is what in the US first graders do, by the way, for those of you who don't have children. It's pretty sweet because I feel like it's very easy for elementary schools. But, you know, if you say, oh my God, one day you'll have to do calculus. And every once in a while, you know, my younger kid might look at what my older kid is doing and he's like, whoa, what, you can tell. It's very disconcerting because you feel like, I know my math, but this, what is this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, you don't, it will. Once you're in 8th grade and done with 8th grade, then the 9th grade math will make sense. And it's very important that we protect the kid from thinking too much about calculus. Yes? Why? Because once you have mastered those first 10 problems, you're a different person with a different view. It's a car that's been upgraded now, right? We started with a Honda and now it's going to be a BMW. So you can't expect in the first stage to look positively at the whole gamut of problems and concepts. It's like you're dishonoring yourself and you're doing something cruel. Don't do that. Say no. So mastering 10 problems, does that feel doable? That feels like I can do that. You know, maybe it'll take me 2 weeks, maybe it'll take me 6 weeks. But once you master those 10 problems, you are a different person now. You're not the same person. It's not going to take 6 weeks to master the next 10. Yes? So armed with this strategic knowledge, put those 10 problems up on a big sheet of paper, print 10 sheets of paper, do it in your favorite way and put them on the wall and say, these are my 10 problems. That's it. Nothing else matters in the world until I master these 10. Then once you mastered those 10, then you can add another 10. By the time you are up to 30, you can add 20 at a time because now you just Ferrari. Yes, now it's like, okay, the car goes past now. It's just become just like, yeah, now add calculus makes sense. Bring it on. So don't make the mistake of looking at all. Your view will be different. So all those problems right now, they won't look like this once you've mastered 10 and then 20. So expand your view very strategically. So to be respectful to who you are and allow yourself to take as much time as you want to take to master those first 10 problems, right? And I always recommend going by problems. You know, don't work on one problem for 1 week and problem 2. No, touch them all every week so that your brain gets used to jumping between topics. That's interview preparation, right? You don't want to do it in too academic a way. At least that's not my advice. Unless you have 3 years or 2 years, then you can take 1 year to study some CS, you know, fundamental courses, which can be really fun, and then you start your preparation. Once you start your preparation, you just don't ever marry a topic. Say, you know, today it's graphs, the next problem I pick will be dynamic programming. I will be lost in the beginning. We know how to be lost now. Yes, slow down, write neatly, like you're printing, you know, Mother's Day card handwriting, prettiest handwriting. If that doesn't work, write with your left hand. But slow down. Every time you sit down to work on a problem, promise yourself the first 5 minutes at least will be in slow down mode. Even if you write the problem over and over again. I have had this experience myself and with plenty of my clients and math coaching students who will tell me they have no idea what to do about a problem. And I will stand up. High schoolers, you have to stand while they slow down because they won't do it otherwise because they know everything, right? And so they're writing and I'm like, no, that's not clean handwriting. Start over, write it neatly, pretty, beautiful, every A, and then they'll write the whole thing and then they'll say, oh, so this is given and I have to compute this and it's not simple interest because of blah. And then you go, oh, you have thoughts now? It's because I thought you had no idea because now you seem halfway there. How did that happen? Well, because you forgot to hate on yourself for not knowing what to do. So it's a gimmick, but it works in the short term just to get yourself on the training of slowing down. But trust me, you won't have to use the gimmick later on. You'll get addicted to slowing down. Just stay with the problem. Say, what are you doing? Say, problem and I are getting to know each other. It's like the new member of my family. I want to see how it looks from this side, from that side, what color they like, what color are their eyes. Like, I don't know what whether we're going to be close or not, or do I have to be there for them? Just getting to know them, okay? Just getting to know the problem. You don't have to solve it. No guns, yeah? Put everything aside. There's a story of a scientist who studied chimpanzees and Shaler or something, and he studied an amazing amount about them. So when he was giving this talk, and chimpanzees are very similar to us, so you can learn a lot about how we work in societies. And someone asked him, how do you know this incredible amount? Well, we've been studying chimpanzees for years. He says, well, it was simple. I didn't go in with a gun. I didn't have a gun, right? So don't go at yourself with ammunition and at war for this preparation, right? That's going to freak a part of you out. You can still do it, but you'll end up expending more effort than you need to. Start slow. So in the first 6 weeks, I want you to just maybe read the problem. Challenge yourself that the first week, I'm just going to take every problem and write it down, what the problem is in a notebook beautifully. And I'll write 5 examples. And for those 5 examples, what is the optimum solution? And now you've said hello to each problem. Then go back to the first problem and say, okay, let me come up with a brute force. You have to cut through your old habits, right? Do something, say something impressive, smart, say something correct. What's the answer? You have to cut through it very aggressively in the beginning. So you can set the stage and say, I'm boss, and we're not going to do that old thing. Yes? Does that make sense? So that's getting started. Too many problems, too overwhelming. Second one was balance, right? So write down the few aspects of your life that are important to you. So my favorites are work, family. Now I've said work before family. I always want to say family first. And it's recorded again. This keeps happening to me. It's okay, my kids won't see it. So family, I'm starting over. Family, work, and then my well-being. Yes, my personal well-being. So that is sleep, food, and eat for me. But you can choose yours. Doesn't matter. And whenever I'm getting super frustrated with myself or my preparation, let's say, you can look at what's going on. You will find a weak link. You might realize that, you know what, my kids haven't been well, or my partner hasn't been well. So I've been sacrificing 2 hours of sleep every day. And so of course you're frustrated. So you need to take a break. You need to take 2 days off, catch up on your sleep. Otherwise you can't sustain this. It's gonna deplete you in a way that's not gonna be strong and powerful when you enter that interview room. Yes? So find out your important links, right? In the company that you are the CEO of, like the board members. There's the sleep person. They're like, no, I disagree with this plan because I'm okay compromising on 1 sleep a week, but this looks bad. This is a bad plan. Like people will say, oh, I can spend 3 hours a day on my preparation. This is why most New Year's resolutions don't work. Because we party like crazy on 31st, and then we start to put armor on. Say, I'm gonna run a marathon, and your system is like, that does not sound safe at all. Even though you think you're getting yourself into a frenzy, that can actually have the opposite effect. Don't freak yourself out by making a big grand plan. Ambitious plans should be made in a calm state. I'm not against ambition at all. I'm very ambitious myself, and I recommend it for greed, ambition, and shamelessness are 3 of my favorite words. And I want that for all of you. But shamelessness is important there. So if you want this next job, and let's say you want to make, I'm just going to pick a number, $600,000 a year or whatever. I dare you to just sit and say, I'm in this new job and I'm making this money. Wow, how good that feels. I'll be just walking in like a boss. A lot of people don't want to do this because it feels like you're going to get your heart broken because it might not happen. So the shamelessness is not there. Dreaming is free. Allow yourself to dream something. It doesn't have to happen, you guys. I mean, every amazing thing that happened, starting from relativity to self-driving cars, the dreams were a lot bigger. There was a lot of shameless dreaming there. And they didn't all come true. I personally know people who work at these companies, and it's hard. But hey, dreaming is free, and maybe you'll get halfway there. Just dream shamelessly. Like this favorite, joke I have, I heard it from somewhere, is that someone says I was sitting in first class and I offered my seat up to this soldier. I feel so good because the whole plane is looking at me because I'm like, thank you for your service to the country. And then he said, of course I didn't do it, but it felt so great just thinking about it. There is a shamelessness there. Yeah. Sometimes I will ask people, one of my clients, to write down how much money they want to make and how they will spend it. Like a fake bank account on your notebook. Say, I made this much money this month, I went for a cruise. And they get uncomfortable after the amounts get too big. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Why? But nobody knows. It's just you and me. We are the only two people who know about this. No. Yeah? Because then you're making, let's say, 300 grand, and now the amounts are crossing 700, and that's how much you think you're worth. There's the problem. You have a limit on what your value is. And I'm not saying to optimize everything for money, by the way. I'm just saying feel free to want it. Once you feel free to want it and not need it, which comes to my most significant aspect of getting started, is why are you doing this? Why do you want the next job? You might not think that as a big obstacle. I think in your experience, the obstacle might show up as, what if? What if nothing happens? What if nothing happens? No new job. Reject from everywhere. All this preparation. What if? What if? I'm just turning this around into why. So is it a do or die situation? If you do not get a job after your preparation, after genuine, sincere preparation where you took care of yourself, first, I would challenge you to find one person who prepared like this and didn't get a job, first of all. So as scientists, I'm telling you the data might be a little bit thin on your what if, but okay, it's still possible, right? You might find that one person, but I think you won't have an easy time of it, which should tell you that it is rare. Yes? But still, what if? What if then? You'll be on the same job that you are before, or right now. And you still probably are in the top 5% earners of United States. So you're not gonna die, okay? For you to pretend that you're gonna die, it's not smart. It's like taking a gymnast and asking her to do, I only know girl gymnasts, okay? I'm sure there are guys, I'm sorry, but I just don't follow them. But if you take a gymnast and ask her to do the next crazy trick and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna just remove this mattress. And now, if you fail doing this trick, you're gonna split your head open and die. How free and confident will she feel trying that trick? That's a real what if. What you're doing is taking that mattress out when it's clearly there. Yes, you just spent $50 to come here and listen to me talk about this. Yes, so you have a life, you have shelter, you have food, you have health insurance. Yes, if you don't, that's a serious problem, and I completely am with you on the what if, right? In which case we need to find a job first and fix those situations, then we can want more. You don't need a new job, just saying. A majority of human beings on this planet will agree that you don't need a new job. Statistically, the data will say that someone who makes the top 5, 6, 7% of United States earners in 2018 does not need to do more. Sociological research over and over again, not just one study, shows that beyond 80K, more money does not give you happiness. I still love money, by the way. Just to be clear, I want a lot of it. So anytime you want to pay more for any of my workshops, just feel free. I'm never going to say no to it, but you don't need it. So there is a mattress, excuse me, as you try this trick. Don't take that mattress out and make this into a cruel situation. It comes from a lifetime of, if you don't do well in school, your life will be ruined. If you don't do well in your 10th, oh my God, you're a useless, completely worthless person. Okay, maybe we have felt like that. It's time to disconnect from it a little bit and say, I'm fine. I already have a job. I want this, guys. Wanting is powerful. Yes, that's the fun of being who you are. You already have a job. You just want more. You want more than 80K. Me too. It's good. But for me to pretend that I need it and I'm going to be worthless without it, that's disrespecting everything that I have accomplished so far. And that's an old pattern. I'm not judging it. I don't want you to hate on that part of yourself. I want you to understand it. Say, I know it's from a lifetime of taking the next milestone and making it do or die. It's like manipulating yourself into working hard. I'm here to tell you, you might be surprised to know that humans, they like to work hard. It feels good. That's the only way you know who you are, by working. So you don't need to manipulate yourself into saying that I won't like you, you won't be worthy of respect, value. Those thoughts will come. So how are we going to counter all of this? Right? So the how is very important. Yes, it makes sense. Then it turns into another motivational poster, which I don't want this workshop to be. Yes, we have to have the how of everything. We have the how of clarity, slowing down. Yes, but we need the how of this. Any ideas? You have a question or a comment?
It was more of a comment. Like, I know in the end it's not do or die, but at least from my perspective, in the Valley and software, you're expected to be at certain stages in your career by a certain amount of time.
By whom?
I
am not there.
Because I know people, and like I know
Yes.
people, like interviewers.
Compare
like,
it,
this guy
yeah.
has been in this role for however long. Why are they not senior? Why are they not staff? And like all these things. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Peer, not just peer pressure, this is a strategic thing too. This is a little bit more than peer pressure, that in the actual job search, I will be expected to know certain things. I will be yes, that'll always be the case, right? And sometimes they'll be mistaken in their view, and sometimes they won't be. So this is a serious thing that we need to figure out what we're going to do about it, right? The only thing you can control about it is your own perspective on it. And more times than not, they will take that cue from you. It's that kind, in a caricatured way, it's like a gap year, right? And people will say, oh, I have taken a gap year. And I feel like people are like, what have you been doing all this time? I took 6 gap years, from almost 6, I think. And I understand the anxiety that even I feel when I go to get a corporate contract or something, and they'll be like, what? But, just 3 days ago, they said, can you send us 3 other clients that you worked for in the past year? I said, no, I haven't worked for 3 other corporate clients. But they expect me to have worked for 3, So I understand it. The expectation is there, like, oh, well, then are you legit? Like, this is not normal. Because normally when people have asking corporations for contracts, they have other clients. And they have that in their system, they need invoices. So it can be a strategic actual issue, yes, at hand. What you can control is your narrative of it. You need to own what you did, yes? You need to own your own, what you're considering as gaps or things where you don't feel particularly caught up, as your own story. You have to put a spin on it. So that will be more personalized work. But I would encourage you to think about, what do you think about it? That's going to make me who I am. And I'm so glad I took that break. I'm not glad every day, to be honest. So I don't want to lie, but overall, I'm really glad. When I'm at my resting identity, I'm very happy that I took that break, because it allowed me to figure out what I like, what I don't like. So, that's a perspective that it takes us a while to get there. I have my own coach to help me through those things. So it took a while to look at it differently. Like you throw away a shirt and you thank it for teaching you that you don't like shirts like that. That's a perspective on that shirt. Or it can be like, I hate all those days where I wore this shirt, I don't even like it. Well, at least now I know. Yeah, so you have to turn around and write your own story. That for me is authenticity, coming from the word author, that I am the author of my story, not you. You get to have your opinions on it, but you don't get to write my story. So you respectfully disagree and you say, at the end of the day, at any given moment, a fixed amount. Like right now, if I freeze this moment, your intelligence and your ability and your skill level is fixed right now. Yes? If you work on a problem for 10 minutes, the way I have requested you to, you will actually be more intelligent at the end of those 10 minutes. But before those 10 minutes pass, there's nothing you can do about your reality. So don't say no to it, and don't let anybody say no to it. They can have their opinion on it, that, oh, but you have to practice your story, and that comes to the behavioral part of those interviews. You have to figure out what your opinion on it. That yes, I might not have XYZ, which someone might expect, but in my case, I made choices that I'm comfortable with. This is what I learned. You need to have your story. You don't need to tell it, but it will be part of your energy. It will be part of your stance. It will be part of your handshake. It'll be part of how you look at this person who's talking to you about your gap or anything that they expect. Does that make sense? Coming back to the how are you going to remember that you want this and you don't want to pretend that you need it? The recommendation I have is for you to write a manifesto or a vision statement, not pages and pages. Maybe, what are they called? They're this size, index cards, index card, neat handwriting, where you write down the why. Why do I want a new job? Want. You could write the word want 10 times actually. That I'm just someone who wants things. I want more money. I want better teammates. I want a better project. It's just what I want. So you're going after something that you want. So when a setback happens, it's just a setback. It's not a personal failure. So I would like you to put it in that vision statement that I'm going after what I want. I don't need this to feel good about myself. I don't need this to prove anything to anybody. I don't need this to win a test or a race or get an A grade in the life test. Yes? To play your own game. Why am I asking you to write this down? Because the peer pressure will be there. Our own old patterns will be there. I do this every day. So I really do practice what I'm preaching in this case. It has been a lifesaver for me. And it evolves over time. I write what I value. I write what work is about for me. And any day, if I'm feeling sick or exhausted before even seeing a client, if I read my manifesto in the morning, then I know what matters to me. And it will allow you to become more fearless and more immersed in your experience. Does that make sense? So that's my recommendation. Write it down. It might take a few tries to get it to where it feels powerful. And you can watch this again. I have said a lot of things. You can see which one appeals to you. Write them down. You can exchange emails with each other after this and exchange your manifestos to get some momentum going. That's totally up to you guys. I'm happy to facilitate that. If you tell me that share my email with the rest of the group, I can do that. But do that exercise. Don't leave it to chance. When you have your manifesto and you have your 5 links, right? Which is sleep, food, eat, whatever, then you know how to manage your preparation, right? So getting started, we've handled by writing down a manifesto and by reminding yourselves visually somewhere that these are the only problems I care about. Even when people put it in a spreadsheet, I ask them to print it out and put it up there. 10 problems, that's my world. Nothing else matters right now. So don't go too much on lead code and look at all these problems or Google problems. And we do that. Some days we're having this anxiety that I don't think, let me look at a Facebook problem. Don't do that. Yes, it's very easy to do. But if you have these visual reminders, it will be slowly you can, and don't start too strong. Don't start with 5 hours a day, 20 minutes a day, right? Just gentle start. I initially even recommend that people listen to a YouTube video of someone explaining a problem, like they're listening to a song in a language they don't know. That's to generate that shamelessness and comfort, right? The other aspect of getting started is that I want you all to do something every day that's relaxing. Now, this sounds like armchair psychology or grandma advice, but it's not, I guarantee you. I would not put it in this important workshop if it was. You need to communicate to your system on a daily basis that you are safe and not under any kind of threat. We talked about performance anxiety, right? That comes up when you're in that interview room. Someone's asked you a question, we're getting anxious. Or someone's telling you how much they make and you went to school together and now you're anxious, right? So if you could imagine, I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out, if you could imagine the control room of where this anxiety comes from, and the person who runs that control room doesn't know English. It's pre-language, right? So it's like you live in this mansion, but the kitchen is in a hut. And you have the brain doesn't upgrade itself. No? We don't demolish it and build it over again because we're not being chased by tigers anymore. Just like it's going to take a while for natural selection to catch up. You'll be at the forefront, yes, because we're trying to figure this out. That, oh, I'm using my brain in a way that it hasn't evolved to do. So you have to work with it. You have to be very kind to it. You have to let it know every day that I'm not being chased by nobody. So that when you sit down to prepare, that your system is less likely to go into a frenzy or feel under threat and go into fight, flight, freeze. Yes. So of course we will slow down and be nice, but I think it's good to do something in a completely, that cuts through, comes at it in a perpendicular direction. Say every day I'll go for a 15-minute walk. My favorite things are walks, long showers, things that people can't do when they're really under threat for their safety and security. So you'll come up with your favorite things to do and take breaks. You know, I'm a huge proponent of the Pomodoro technique. You can look that up. Just work in 25-minute segments. Make the first 5 to be the infinite time, clean contact, slow down, and then do 20 more minutes, then get up and move around. I don't agree in the 25 label, but if you look at various research on health, sitting is the new smoking, apparently. So let's try to be smart about it. So if I look at it all, I feel like 25 to 45 is all good. 45 minutes, you should just get up and move around a little bit. Even if you're in a state of flow, it's okay. I love flow. I understand flow. And, but I don't, it doesn't have to be the be all and end all. You know, it's not so elusive that, oh, if someone disturbs you, you just won't be able to find it again. You know, it's not this magical thing. It happens with immersion and you forget everything else. It's you and the problem and you're having so much fun. And that can be achieved eventually in 45 minutes. And it's also the time of the interview. So I think strategically, anywhere from 25 to 45, what makes sense that day, right? If you just do one session in the morning, just do 25 minutes, then go to work, then maybe do another one in the evening. Start with every other day. I would challenge you, whatever you think is a slow start, slow it further down on my advice. First decide what you think is a slow start. So you might say 1 hour a day, then say, okay, Geeta said to halve it down. The first week, do 1 hour a day, every other day. Really let your system know that everything's okay. We're not going to war. This is not some big gung-ho thing. So sometimes we feel like if I just really pump myself up, full of like, yes, I can do this. I think there's some research, which I'm really glad to know, because I was convinced about it even beforehand. I think you can induce some panic. So there's research that shows now that if you work yourself up into too much of a frenzy about something, you can, you know, you're less likely to finish because you can be exhausting, can create some panic. Does that make sense? And remind yourself that you're fine. You've already arrived. There are a million ways for you to fulfill potential, find fulfillment, find respect. Yes? You can start volunteering all around your community. I guarantee you all the billionaires will respect you. Respect can be had many ways, okay? Potential can be fulfilled many ways. You can fulfill your potential to be the best parent you want to be, the best neighbor. It's infinite potential in infinite dimensions. You will never fulfill all your potential, which is a bit of a relief, isn't it? Because then I can just do what I want, right? You just want to feel more and more alive as a professional, you know, all pistons firing. That's what I want at work. Can I bring all of me to work so that not, you know, it's an opportunity. If you look at work this way, then every once in a while you will have this hour and two at work where you got yourself right. All the puzzle pieces fit together. You were happy, you felt worthy, you're firing on all cylinders, working really well. And that's fun to chase for its own sake. It's a high in its own self, you know? Does that make sense? It's like an end in itself. So you have the natural motivation to work hard and strive for things. That's what we do as human beings. That's how we took over the planet. We are natural strivers. You don't need to judge yourself for not striving enough in the way that your neighbor is striving. Does that make sense? Playing your own game is the way I like to understand it. There are many, many clever ways of understanding it. Some of you have heard it from me in private sessions or otherwise. You know, what is the menu? What is the dinner, right? Menu is, let's say, money. But the dinner is wealth. Right? I just want to be wealthy, personally. Now, wealth has a much more expansive meaning. And wealth is something I want to be able to feel, not like touch outside of me. So that makes it easier for me to not compromise on my values. Makes it a little bit easier. Even if it's 5% easier, it's a huge difference to your quality of life, right? That I remember what's the dinner. So a new job, what's the dinner? More excitement, more of things, not need anything. I'll just have more fun. I'll be more excited to go to work. That's the dinner. Well, that dinner can be had other ways too. I've challenged people to start brown bag discussions at their current job and say, oh no, I bet you can find more collaboration in your job, but not all jobs. Some are just, you really need to get out, right? Unfortunately, that's just how it is, right? You have to be respectful to who you are. And if the job is not honoring you, you can only try so much to change the situation. But you know, you can volunteer in your community. You can get so many things, so many different ways. So let's not pretend that you're after some high and lofty goal of internal fulfillment. No, this is just what you want. Just greed, which is good. If you know it for what it is, then it's the best thing. Greed can be there. It's a great motivator, I think. But it shouldn't be your boss, right? You can work with your greed. Greed is good. That's how we have planes and everything. I don't think they're trying to serve the world out of some kind of altruistic thing. It's just what they wanted, the inventors, you know. They just like couldn't think of anything else. Just wanted to solve the question. If something could carry them through the air, that's just greed and ambition, right? So writing that manifesto down, taking any hook that you want from the recording, just checking that it is recording, saying again and again, you will get it from the recording, right? And making that manifesto your own and say, this is what, you can do this for your work too, but in this workshop, we're talking about interview preparation. What about staying the course will be difficult. So we know getting started, if you have that manifesto, you can counter a lot of the obstacles of just the overwhelm of getting started. Too many problems, we got that. System design is a little bit separate. If you guys feel in some time that you would like another workshop like this that addresses a graph problem or a DP problem and these questions, then let me know. I'm not gonna market this. This is going to be the group for now. If you have a close friend or a colleague that you see would really benefit it, you can include them in this group. I'm going to start a new group and make an email group for everyone who's right now listening. And there are a few people who have asked for the recording, 1 or 2 who couldn't be here today, and that will be it. And whoever you add. So you are free to add people that you know, but don't advertise it because I don't need to scale or grow this. But if something comes up and you feel like, okay, a couple of months down the line, you're like, okay, I think it would be good to have a reminder of this is what's coming up. Then let's compile a list of those and then we'll do another one. Sounds good? Yeah? When is the next one? Yes, well, the next one will be when you guys have worked on this stuff and have some challenging things for me to cover and think about. Yes?